Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sounds. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
Now, how has UK's stance on animal protection evolved in recent years? And what changes would you like to see in legislation?
I mean, there has been a shift, I think. Like, we do talk a sort of about a new generation. I think like what I grew up with, it was very much an animal rights scene, and I suppose it was quite political in a way, and that still exists, and I don't know where it came from, but there's very much now a kind of a more there are more young people turning to veganism, adopting a vegan lifestyle and a vegan diet. So that's definitely come about. And I think in the UK, I would say that it does feel like a movement is reforming. So I think, there was, I suppose I sort of came in at the end of the old school of animal rights. And, I used to run the Animal Rights Gathering in the UK, which is kind of like, the old school style of animal rights. And I think there was a little bit of, there was disconnect between sort of the older movement and what's emerged with vegan sort of lifestyle. But I really feel that, those two movements seem to be coming together and, acting as one, being one community. So that's really really positive development, I think, in the UK community. And then when you ask me what piece of legislation was I most like, and that's a piece of work that we're engaged in, is trying to understand a legal strategy. And I was just reading this morning how in the US, like, one of the key moments was a piece of litigation, Brown versus the Board of Education, and I think the organisation that brought that had sort of worked and strategized for about 45 years before it came to court. So that's a piece of work that we're trying to do, is like, how can we build a ladder of different sort of legislation and strategic litigation. So I guess the piece of legislation that I'd be most happy to see is not necessarily like the thing that, the big goal, like ban factory farming, ban family, ban killing animals, because, that's a long way off. But I suppose anything that gives us a part of the ladder, that it not only does it have an impact on today's animals, but it can help us, progress and build, change how we talk, change how we think, change how lawyers, change how judges, change how politicians think about animals. But any legal or legislative win is a win, and that that can bring hope to the movement, and it can bring a sense of like achievement. So I think absolutely any win would be a win for the movement.
It's as I said just prior to this conversation, it's all about baby steps. Even a small, one ladder up is also is like we're moving in the right direction. Now, what role do you think the grassroots movements and the NGOs play in driving legal reforms for the animal welfare?
So we're a big fan of a framework called the movement ecology framework. which was developed by some grassroots activists in the United States, they're South American, it's called the AYNI Institute, so AYNI Institute. And they talk a lot about how any movement is comprised of an ecology, and there are different roles in the ecology, and they're complementary, and the successful movements need all roles, and at different times you need different roles being in emphasis. So they talk about the NGOs and the non-profits primarily as playing the inside game. So they've got access to power. So they've got routes to talk to politicians and civil servants and people who are in the institutions that uphold and can change the current policies and law. So the big advantage of the non-profits, I guess, is the negotiation with the other side. And then they talk about the grassroots as bringing the power to the negotiation table. And so what grassroots are effective at doing is they can change the narrative. So they can change the ideas we live by having all of these conversations with friends, family, and colleagues. They can do mass protest. They can organize, so using community organizing or structure-based organizing. You can go and like we have outreach programs. Lots of movements use outreach where you go in door-to-door knocking and like having what are called like deep canvassing conversations. So sort of careful method about how you persuade people at the doorstep to support legislation or change. So for me, there's not, and I think most people are at the same place now. There's not a competition. One's not right. One's not wrong. So the non-profits and the grassroots can play a complementary role to each other. And for me, it's important to say like the grassroots are both organized grassroots, coming together in groups and doing outreach or doing protest. But it's also, the grassroots is also individuals, and they're not connected with other, activists, and they are just doing the work, talking to people in their community, in their everyday life, their friends, family, and colleagues.
That's very enlightening because, as you rightly said, we're not competing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's rather we have to complement each other. And coming from the corporate culture that I have been, I remember back in early 90s, when I started my career, there was a very strong article which I had read. It said, it's about bringing those small boats together to build a bigger ship.
Mm-hmm.
And that has stuck to me, I think, for more than 30 plus years. And I just can't, that's what I keep telling people. We're not competing. We have to learn to complement. I think, but in India, this is what I'll tell you. At the grassroots, the problem is people think we're competing with each other. I think that needs to change. That mindset needs to change.
I think what's more important rather is for each role to sort of work out, how do I do this role best? So for the NGOs, the non-profits, it's like, what's the best way of sort of having impact as an NGO, as a non-profit? And it's kind of working up the boundaries. Okay, this is what non-profits do well, and this is what's best left to grassroots. And then the same for the grassroots. It's not trying to do the work that maybe is best left to the non-profits.
I think this is where it comes in. having a self-realization where your strengths lies, and saying, hey, this is what I'm good at. Let me do this, and let me make a team of people who are good at other things, and then bring everybody together under one umbrella or whatever, however they want to do it, and go about making the change. That is what that is my personal opinion or my personal philosophy. But we are all open to our opinions. It's like agree to disagree sort of thing.
Yeah, because I think in being complementary, we don't have to agree to be complementary. Like, we don't have to be sitting down and agreeing a strategy or agreeing objectives. Like, if we're radical grassroots with very large corporatized non-profit, it's like you can be complementary in different spaces without a formal agreement. Like, you can just be looking and observing and thinking like, okay, what can we do? Well, we can build narrative power, and then the non-profits can take advantage of that.
Absolutely, 100%. Coming back to this, I would ask you, some cultures have deep-rooted traditions involving animals, especially in India as well. How do we balance cultural practices and ethical concerns about animal welfare?
I think for me, I might get myself into trouble with some people.
No, please don't worry.
So I'm happy to say it. It's like there isn't a balance to be made. Like, is animals' well-being trumps culture? And culture changes. So and I suppose I'm working in the UK, and like our work is only dedicated at the UK, so I see the real possibility for a vegan society in the UK, a society without violence. I mean, that's what I'm interested in. It's not about a vegan society, it's about a society without violence. And that's the value that all humans hold highest, is avoiding violence. So I think it's about new traditions, new culture, adapting culture. Like I was saying before, like, I now have a tradition and a culture of certain things I eat at Christmas that I'm now, like, they've become Christmas for me. Yeah.
That's a very good way of staying politically correct. I love that answer. Now, do you think the general public is becoming more compassionate towards animal, or are we still a long way from there?
I'm guessing there's some good research out there that tells us what's happening. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert and then discover I'm wrong. But I definitely feel that there's an opening to this idea of animal rights. Like, I have a lot of friends, particularly friends who are older than me, and they're resistant or hesitant to adopt veganism or agree with animal rights, but they all say to me, I know that this is the next thing. I know this is the direction we're going. I know this will happen. So I think that opening is definitely there, and that's the opening that we need and want, isn't it? That what we want is a society that will permit politicians, permit the courts to make rulings in favor of animals. It really impacted me. I mean, it's probably 10 years ago. It was it actually was my sister talking, and she does eat animals. She has a normal kind of UK diet, or what's considered normal. And I can't remember the conversation, but she was very clear. It was kind of like, one of those moments in a movie where everything goes quiet and slow. And she was very clear. She said, if there was a referendum to end the use of animals or the killing of animals, then of course I would have to vote with it. I wouldn't be able not to. And that was, it was, one data point, one case study, but it was enlightening for me. And I think a lot of people are that way inclined. They want life to be made easy for them. Like if we did have that legislation, they wouldn't be able to do it, so there wouldn't be the temptation. And society would also, evolve in preparation. So there would be loads of alternative things, to cook and eat. So yeah, that's the hope I have. That's the direction I see us going. I think is that there's an opening to the inevitability. That's what I think I see. People see this as inevitable. So yeah, I do think we're going in the right direction.
All right. What do you think the future of animal welfare looks like in UK and globally? And are there any emerging trends that give you hope?
I've been really sort of excited in the UK to see more organisations engaging in strategic litigation, and there seems to be a community building there, and a lot of partnerships building there. And there are essentially 3 law conferences in the UK on animal law this year. So real community building amongst lawyers, and then those lawyers working with organisations and advocates. I'm seeing an initiative happening at the moment to kind of form a collective of lawyers engaged in strategic litigation. So that's I'm feeling that's very exciting.
Good, good to know that at least there's some movement going on over there. It's like people, like a collective coming together. But the rise.
I would also say I do the tactic and strategy that I really I'm enthused by. I think is the open rescue strategy that's being used not just as a tactic but as a strategy to kind of like get into the law, have create precedents in the courts. So direct action everywhere, or DXC in the US, I think have pursued that quite successfully, and I'd really like to see that kind of become more widespread. And I think I think it sort of encapsulates so much. It gets things into the courts. It creates really good stories because it's about individual animals.
Yes.
You see the activists are just like people like us, and I think that's kind of important for the news. And it's it builds on moral authority. Because it's about that. The activists are really putting themselves on the lifeline. They've gone to court, they've gone to jail, or they've gone to prison. So it really, really signals the strength of conviction and the urgency and the importance of this. So yeah, open rescue as a strategy is also one of the exciting developments.
Let's keep our fingers crossed. With hope, as you said. With the rise of plant-based diets and the lab-grown meat, do you see ethical treatment of animals improving in the food industry?
It certainly opens up possibility for more people to shift away from eating animals. In the short term, I could see it might put, if it becomes a kind of new trend in society to be thinking about the ethics of food, and people shift into a plant-based diet, then I could see a kind of a reaction from the animal industry, agriculture industry to, take animal welfare more into account. I mean, for me, the goal is to end it through law and legislation.
I think that is what we all are aiming to, is to make the life better for these souls, at the end of the day. I guess, we're all doing our small bit, as we have been discussing during the conversation. It's all about doing that small step and hoping for the change. Now, coming back, if you could implement one major policy change to improve animal welfare globally, what would it be and why?
The thing that comes to mind, so I suppose it's about welfare rather than rights, is maybe the right to retire.
So that's a nice one.
Yeah, so for a cow to have the right to retire, which I think lots of us think they do, in this deluded world that we live in. I mean, there's also the right not to be separated from your mother or not to be separated from your child, which have huge impact. And I think there are ways in here, like, we all care about dogs. Dogs are, particularly here in the UK. I also think in India, a nation of animal lovers. A lot of that means we're a nation of dog and cat lovers. So there are ways in where we could expand the law that maybe a dog can't be separated from their mother for the first year of their lives. So that would radically improve the well-being of a dog. But then that also kind of that would generate some conversation and acknowledgement of the emotions of animals, and then that would also open the door for cows, kind of like one of the obvious ones.
That's a very thought-provoking question, to be honest, and what you mentioned, but retiring, that is something that we don't even think about, I think we humans don't even think that the cow needs a retirement or a dog needs a retirement. Okay, at least in India, I know, at least from what I know, the canines, what they use for the security purposes, the official, they do retire after 7 years or service of being in the service. They do get retired, and they do get a proper send-off from what I have been seeing or knowing from the people that I've been communicating with. But yeah, I think, but that also needs to transform to the larger animals, even if I'm not wrong with that. But that's a very good point you brought in. Now, coming back to the question that I would have, what advice would you give to the individuals who want to make a real impact in the field of animal rights and ethics and welfare?
Like we've talked about, there's loads of opportunity in the everyday. Like, you do not have to go and work for an NGO or a non-profit. There is just never going to be enough money to pay people in non-profits to campaign. So you can have an everyday normal life and just be conscious of the political activity that you can engage in, with the opportunities around you with friends and family and colleagues and neighbours. So that's step one. I'm a big fan of the Liberation Pledge, which is a commitment not to sit at the table with people eating dead animals or the products of animals. I think that's a really powerful way of doing everyday activism, and really necessary. Like, I do not see animal liberation happening or significant change happening without large numbers of us doing that, to say this is important enough for me that I won't tolerate this behavior in front of me. And then the way I've done activism, all my life is, before I came into the animal movement, I was, involved in housing and environmental and, just my local community. And, there have been times in my life where I worked, like I was saying, 5 days a week, and then just did things at the weekend and evenings. When I integrated it, like work conversations, there are times when I've worked 3 days a week, and then I've sort of volunteered, 1, 2, 3 days a week and in the evenings. And, the big thing for me, the choice that I made early in my life was not to aspire to the big house, not to aspire. I made a lot of choices as opposed to have a simpler, cheaper life. So I live in a relatively small house in a poorer neighborhood in a town that's not very expensive, and that's enabled me to, for most of my life, just to work 2.5 days a week and then to be an activist. So that's something for people who are committed to aspire to. Focus on your needs, let go of your wants, integrate activism into the everyday. Like activism, like I said, I worry about the word. It's like it's volunteering and like the engaged citizen, and like living, personal as political, living a political life. I think when we talk about activists, we think we've got a certain image in our head, and like often we kind of
That's true.
Yeah, that's not me. And it's just like, so it can be really off-putting. So I think it's like engaging in the everyday on behalf of animals is something that we can all do.
Absolutely. Now, coming to the end of my podcast, the last question that I would ask you is for the listeners. How can the listeners contribute to improving animal welfare in their everyday life?
I think just like we've been talking about, have those conversations, learn how to have those conversations, like think about it, reflect. That was part of my practice. Like I took the Liberation Pledge, so I committed not to stay at tables or go to tables, be with people that are eating animals. And I thought a lot about that before I did it, and I wrote down what I was going to say, and then I had a conversation, and then I would have a little journal to say like, well, what went well, what could go better. And over time I became much more effective at doing that well. So yes, start with the conversations around you and learn. Look for resources. We've got lots of resources on our website, Animal Think Tank. They're probably under narrative and messaging, and we've got like a messaging toolkit which gives ideas about how you can talk to people about animal rights. And then find some friends to do, or find some people to do it with, because that always keeps our motivation going, to work with others and to like have a sense of social commitment and the support that others can bring us, like when things don't go well, where we try to persuade somebody and it didn't go well, but also then the motivation to keep going.
Right. This is where I'm going to come. This is where I normally request the guest to speak their heart out, is like something like an open mic. If you would like to request, for the listeners to support a cause that you are close to your heart, or for a funding request, I leave that open to you.
My request of people would be to be bold, think bold, remember the successes of the past. This is inevitable. Spread the hope.
Wow. That was inspiring. Now, Mark, I would like to thank you for taking the time out and sparing so much of time to be on the show with us. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.